Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Well, to start off with this week, I just want to welcome the over 1,000 new subscribers to our channel in the past 28 days and all the new members that are joining our premium crypto community. It's great that you guys are absorbing all this content in a bear market, and it's interesting that those numbers are growing in and of itself, which we'll discuss. We're going to go over all the news as usual, guys. Litecoin led the way. We're going to talk about that, Binance and that trade we had on, as well as Maker being in the biggest movers of the larger cap coins. We've also got a lot of people starting to talk about this Adam and Eve bottoming pattern, which is one that we did a deep dive into our educational unit section as well recently. But on this day in crypto history, so it was this time last year when Facebook cracked down on all those crypto ads, and many suspected at the time they would be launching their own cryptocurrency, and we were sort of watching that play out now as they absorb other blockchain companies. 2017, China exchanges all halted after a meeting with the PBOC. They're worried about capital fleeing their country and they want to control that. We still sort of see that framework at the moment. In 2016, there was an IPO by a group called Bitcoin Group, and they were miners, and I participated in this, and then we had our money returned to us when the ASX said, no, you can't list Bitcoin's too dangerous, we can't regulate it, we don't know enough about it. That would have been a phenomenal return for getting in on a mining company in 2016. We also had Blockstream raise $55 million that year, which was a lot of money at the time. In 2015, there was a very controversial article about the bad blood between Ripple and Stellar, and they still have a bit of a rivalry to date. They have gone their separate ways somewhat. In 2014, rumors started to come out about a bug responsible for Mt. Gox outages, and we all know how that ended up. Into the macro news. So Australia just recorded its second largest ever trade surplus, and there's a big but here. We've had a record low number of imports, decreases in our service sector activity, which is a huge part of our economy. House and apartment prices are falling in Sydney and Melbourne and just about all capitals now. Decrease in retail spending, particularly over the December quarter, and decrease in car sales. Now, we've also got some fears around construction and safety of high-rise apartments and that banking Royal Commission. Now, how long? I've been saying this for a while, until the RBA drops rates and starts to print money. And the Royal Commission handed down this week, bit of a slap on the wrist. The banks finished up 10% for the week. We've got our documentary into the banks and housing coming out hopefully this week, just putting the final touches on it. So don't miss that, guys. If you still haven't got your head around what happened in the Royal Commission as well, Martin and I did do a summary, all the important points if you haven't watched that yet. But this is one thing that I've been harping on about, that money printing and interest rate cuts are coming. And here we see this perfectly in the chart, where the further back you go, as always, the market and the central banks promise things will get better, we're going to raise rates, we're going to grow, the economy is going to be great. And as we get closer and closer to this date, the rubber hits the road, as we love to say. And as of this week, the market itself is now calling the bluff and starting to price in a rate cut. Now, Australia's had these emergency measures going for a long time now, and things are meant to be really rosy, yet we're staring down the barrel of that interest rate cuts and money printing. But I'm going to talk about that more in the documentary. I don't want to give too much away. Overseas to France now, we see the yellow vest continuing, so burning euros and rampaging banks. How long can this go on for, and how big is this movement going to grow? Is it actually going to affect the banks with some real runs, and is it going to turn people towards cryptocurrency? Italy slides into recession. This darkens the outlook for the rest of Europe and all the banks. It's so interconnected with that debt these days. They kick it down the road, but at some point or another, the rubber has to hit the road, guys, and this is just going to affect the whole world. Europe is so huge. The relationship with the US, if they do more money printing, that makes its way into US markets. It can make markets go even higher. That money printing is so interconnected these days, and a lot of people don't have their heads around that. That's why we focus on that educational side of things on this channel so much. So we saw another big merger. This is going to make BB&T and SunTrust the sixth largest bank in the US. So the banks are getting bigger and bigger and more untouchable. And this is kind of what happens when we see other banks weakening, and when there's talk about Deutsche Bank merging in Europe. So we're just seeing these banks that have got themselves into nasty positions, and the big boys come in and gobble them up and merge with them. Over to Finland now, and they were one of the countries that experimented with universal basic income. So giving 2,000 employees between 25 and 58 years of age around 560 euros in monthly income. And they're going to end this. And this is a debate or a talking point that you could go on about for hours, whether or not you can just hand out money, and does that help the economy? And a lot of the evidence is showing now, it doesn't matter if you print it and give it to the top end of town or you just hand it out to everyone. The economy is not that simple. By creating money, we can't necessarily improve things. ETFs. So this week we saw 2 new ETFs launch. One tracking cloud computing. I've spoken a lot about Golem, iExec, and plenty of these, Storage, SIA. This is such a huge space, and now you can get exposure to this. I know a lot of you guys are stock traders, and you can now get exposure through these ETFs to cloud computing and blockchain companies. So while they continue to say Bitcoin is too risky and too speculative and not regulated, a bit of a surprise that blockchain companies, we're seeing things like Long Island iced tea and all that sort of corruption and foul play, and yet they're allowing a blockchain ETF for all those companies, but we can't actually have a Bitcoin or cryptocurrency ETF in the US just yet. Arbor also announced this week that they'll be allowing investors and users of their app exposure to stocks through cryptocurrency, and this just gives Bitcoin and Litecoin, which underpins ARPA, even more use case. The more things you can do with a cryptocurrency, the more utility you're giving it. So there's been a couple of, I think DX Exchange was the first one, allowing investors to use Bitcoin to invest in stocks. And this is exciting because one by one we see bigger and bigger. People want to capture this market. We're seeing all these low fee apps. It's really opening up the world of finance to the average guy on the street, and it's great to see. Into the crypto news. So Zcash had a deadly fix, and how this works is there was basically a bug found, and they didn't tell anyone for over a year. So there was only about a dozen individuals that knew about this. They don't think it's been exploited, and this is the issue with privacy coins. If someone had figured out a way to exploit this and create more of the currency, we don't really know. It's not like Bitcoin where we have a very transparent blockchain explorer because of the anonymous nature of these different privacy coins. So they didn't tell anyone. They have fixed it. I don't think it's anything too much to worry about, but this is just another reason that we see cryptocurrency being at the very cutting edge, and we're regularly finding bugs in the large cap coins. It just shows you how early on we are in this space, and how crazy all this technology still is. And I enjoyed this talk by Charles Hoskinson talking about peer reviewing, and that's one of the big defining features of Cardano. So I've certainly got that one in my portfolio. All their updates and implementations are peer reviewed, and they're going about it that way with the argument that it's far more likely to pick up any bugs before they're implemented. Some good news for BitTorrent token holders, and that price is now up 600% since the ICO. So this is one that, again, has divided the community, whether a BitTorrent token has any real utility. Are people going to use this, or the torrenters, the rewards to seed? I might do an entire episode about that, but either way, it's good to see that there's still a bit of life in the market, and maybe something like this has sort of sparked people's interest, got a few new people into crypto. I'm not sure, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below about BitTorrent. Does it need a token, and was this one just pumped by Binance? So speaking of Binance, I shared this trade idea on the 18th of January about the BNB and the Tron token and Binance Launchpad, and how I thought it was going to cause a big increase in price. And Binance is now up 35% since we posted that. They're going to unveil another project on Launchpad pretty soon. So it's good to see people getting excited. Again, I think a lot of people are very suspicious of the relationship between Tron, that token, the Launchpad, who was allowed to buy it, how fast it sold out. I probably don't want to comment on that too much until we have more evidence, and if this is a recurring theme or if it was just a one-off, because they did say that they had a lot of issues surrounding their first launch. Some more news out this week that Mt. Gox is aiming to be revived by Brock Pierce, who a lot of you know. So I'm not sure if this is a good thing or not. I think the damage has really been done reputation-wise. I mean, as a trader investor, are you really going to rush to open an account with the famous Mt. Gox? I'm not sure. Maybe it's close to a few people's hearts, but too many bad memories for me and others. I don't think I'll be using Mt. Gox even if it makes a comeback. So a lot of people say that I don't talk about Bitcoin Cash enough, and there's certainly some of our followers that are avid believers in Craig Wright being Satoshi, and he did publish an article this week called Careful What You Wish For, where he did say that he was Satoshi, he was the creator of Bitcoin. So again, I don't want to talk about this. I don't believe that he was the only person behind Bitcoin. He may have been a contributor to the group. He did thank others in this, but he said that it was mainly his idea. Have a read of that article if you like, guys. I always try to read both sides of any argument, but for me, I just don't think that it's adding up. Sorry. So Litecoin retook fourth this week. So making up for lost time. Sorry, that's the beginning of my dad jokes as I approach becoming a father. But I've always referred to Litecoin as the big three along with Bitcoin and Ethereum. So yes, Ripple's number 2 at the moment. I think Litecoin has got a big use case. And I've made so many videos about this as a test net. This has been our most popular video we've just about ever done. I think it's got 15,000 views in the first week talking about how Litecoin is going to lead this super cycle. For those of you that like to trade options, LedgerX have also unveiled betting markets around these halving dates as well. So if you're an options trader, go and check out some of the pricing on those. But I've been talking about implementing privacy on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin for over a year now, and this is the number one headwind that a lot of the people aren't talking about. And it's finally being discussed a bit more in the mainstream, which is great to see. So I posted this on the 8th of Feb to our members that Litecoin might be implementing Mimblewimble. Litecoin also announced that they'll be sponsoring a large film festival after the UFC. So they've got a lot of attention, and it has caused a run up in price that we'll take a look at when we check out the charts. So Kraken buys UK exchange, and this is going to give investors in Europe exposure to more crypto derivatives and futures. It's these big boys that are starting to buy up all the smaller exchanges, and I actually think there's going to be a lot of exchanges shut in the next few months if markets don't turn around, and there's probably only room for 5 large ones and then 1 or 2 fiat on-ramps in your local country as well. But let me know what you guys think about that in the comments below. So we saw one of the SEC chiefs come out this week and say it's only a matter of time until Bitcoin gets that ETF approved. And I think that's probably stating the obvious, but you know, it's just a matter of when. We also saw the SEC come out and say that tokens sold in a functioning network are not securities. Again, this wasn't the SEC per se, rather than one of their board members. But this was something that we've had chats with Australian regulators as well about. If something actually has a true utility and it is being used, that very much strengthens your case. And not many tokens currently have that utility. So if you're a project out there, you're thinking about doing an ICO or a utility, make sure it has true utility. Make sure you can onboard users from day one rather than, you know, future promises and just having an idea and a white paper. Now, there was a fake website going out this week reporting that Bakkt was raising more money. And I'm sorry, guys, because I did tweet this. And when I read this, it was on Finder, and that is a trusted website. And I looked at the price straight away and it hadn't moved, and I thought, right, this news is actually broken by Finder because they do get some exclusive interviews. So I did share that. I did have to delete it and also tweet an apology. So sorry for that, guys. That was a scam website. Nobody has sent them money, thankfully, but a lot of people, including myself, are a bit excited to get that Bakkt news over the line. However, they did come out the following day and just say, look, guys, we've finalized that first acquisition. They're talking about launch being a little bit later on this year now. You know my thoughts on this. I'll talk about real-world adoption shortly, but I did tweet Jake Shavinsky. So he is a lawyer, and he's very much got his head around all this regulation. And I did ask him his insights into the CFTC's regulatory authority over Fidelity's investment products, versus backed. And what he's saying is because of that, the futures contracts involved in backed, then it's very different because the CFTC don't have any authority over Fidelity's digital asset service. So again, I think Fidelity's probably the one that's most likely to get approved first rather than backed or an ETF. But again, we'll see how that plays out. As I said, it's real-world adoption that's getting me excited. I've got an entire video coming out this week about the countries that have got the most Bitcoin volume, and Argentina is certainly up there, and their state public transport system now accepts Bitcoin. And it's these countries where the fiat, their local currency, has performed so poorly that we're seeing the percentage of all transactions done in Bitcoin steadily increase, and that is what's going to get Bitcoin to succeed in the long run. Finally, we saw CEO of Twitter, Jack Dorsey, talking about Twitter in a number of tweets this week. So he was on Joe Rogan. Thanks to everyone that explained to me why that episode was pretty unpopular, because Jack didn't get grilled enough about all their censorship. But he's been giving Bitcoin a lot of exposure lately, participating in this Lightning Network torch experiment where people are sending each other invoices and showing that Litecoin network can really work. And he's also come out and said that Bitcoin's the only currency he owns, and he doesn't really see a lot of use case for the others. But yeah, he is a owner of Bitcoin. Whether or not he'll implement that into Twitter somehow in the future with the tip bots or something, I think that's all pretty exciting. A guy like this has got a lot of pull. So to see him speaking highly of Bitcoin, there's a lot of people that are going to take notice. On to the charts now, guys. So here we see where we entered and posted about Binance Coin likely to run up, and it has had a good effort. So in a bear market, if you understand the fundamentals and the news, it's good to see that there's still opportunities there. As far as Bitcoin goes, let's have a look. So we've had a bit of a push up from this cycle bracket, nothing too much, but we've approached that 50-day moving average. Let's have a look at this on the 4-hourly. This probably shows it best. What I'm waiting for now is these slower moving averages, the faster moving averages on the 4-hour time frame to catch up. So this is forming a nice bull flag, decreasing volume. When these averages catch up, let's see if it can just nest nicely in here and have another leg higher rather than just our BART patterns where we drop straight back down, which we've been seeing. But if we have a look at Ethereum, these previous support and resistances, again, have been acting nicely. Same scenario, bull flags everywhere to be seen, but Litecoin was the real leader. And if we zoom out to the daily, while Bitcoin and Ethereum are hovering under their 50-day moving average, Litecoin's jumped all the way up to its 200-day moving average. Now, if we have a look at our cycle brackets here as well, guys, Litecoin has been getting that significant push up. So this is all pretty healthy. Let's see how it goes. There's plenty of overhead resistance here. I don't think we can announce the end of the bear market just yet, guys. But there isn't a lot of resistance if we do clear these levels. We're probably looking up at that round 4,000 number there. Then we've got this longer term downtrend coming into play at around 4,500. And then the 200-day moving average, by the time we get there, would likely be around 5,000. So it's one step at a time. We have to keep in mind that we are still in a downtrend on the weekly, and this is that Adam and Eve pattern. If you want to know more about that, the psychology behind it, how to trade it, then head to nuggetsnews.com.au to join our premium members area. But thanks for tuning in, guys. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around, and we'll talk again soon. Cheers.